Dan, hope you're out casting the line somewhere. Just wanted to follow up with you. I think I've got it. Show number 1, Skiff story number 1. How about Flip Pallot in hall number 1? Give me a call back. We'll get things set up. Thanks, buddy. Bye.
Well, Flip, thanks so much for joining us today. You know, we're sitting here in hall number 1, the skiff that started it all, this new revolution, I would call it, in the technical poling skiff world. And, you know, we look at it every day in the showroom there at Hells Bay, and I just sit and wonder, you know, all the stories and all the people and all the fish that have been caught out of this skiff over the years. And could you share with us kind of the history of hall number 1 and where it's been and kind of its life through your eyes?
Let me hasten to say that I'm so glad that this hall can't talk.
Yeah.
That said, the genesis of this concept came from a time in South Florida and the Everglades where you really had to get shallow to get the quality fish. So a small cadre of people used john boats. It was just amazing what you could do with this john boat. There were also lots of things you couldn't do with that john boat because the ride was terrible. They were noisy, but you could get to the fish's house. So you found ways to deal with all those other things.
Right.
As long as you could get to the fish's house. At the time that I hunted and fished with a great deal, Hal Chittum came up with the idea of building a fiberglass boat that wouldn't make as much noise but would still float where the john boat floated. My thinking was that if we could create entry in the front of this imaginary boat and force the entry but keep the john boat features and the overall measurements of this Monarch boat,
Right.
It might be something really great. We knew a guy named Chris Moorjohn who really knew materials. Lots of new materials were being brought into the boat building industry for the Americas. Chris kept on the cutting edge of all of this stuff. Chris was a genius at calculating draft and weight. I'll never forget this. The three of us, Chris, Hal, and I, we set about not to make a mold, but to make 3 one-off boats. But first there had to be a one-off, which was going to be the boat we're sitting on.
The one we're sitting on today.
Yeah, this didn't come
Hall
out.
number 1.
Chris built this. They leased a little piece of property up in New Smyrna and St. Augustine.
St. Augustine, right?
St.
Yeah.
Augustine. And I remember this giant oak tree over this little piece of property. And I remember Chris trying to work and loft this boat and acorns falling, raining out. And so Chris built a little visqueen shelter to
Right.
build this boat under.
Right.
You know, the guide thing drove the design of boats. So we built this boat. We took it to the first shallow water expo. We built a visqueen tub and floated this boat with full fuel, ice chest with ice, full tackle, 25 horsepower motor, and we glued a little piece of yardstick on the transom and floated the boat in this visqueen pool.
Wow.
And it was like 3.5 inches. Now we were building a mold, so we wanted to sell some boats. Mm-hmm. So I took this boat down to the Keys and started taking guides out in the boat. They just couldn't get it. They just
really
couldn't. No.
Wow.
It was too little. It was too tippy. It was too this. It was too that. 25 horsepower motor. What am I going to? And then we decided to take it down and fish a bonefish tournament in Little Keys with it. Right. We were the only ones in the tournament, but nobody could get to the fish.
Right.
It was stupid.
Well, I heard rumors that you were in there fishing like 3 hours before anybody else because
we could see them out there working the edges, waiting for water, and we were in there tailing fish everywhere, jumping out of the boat, wading to them. I mean, it was nuts.
Right.
And then fishing tournaments in the backcountry with redfish, same thing. And it finally got to be where guides were calling and saying, geez, can we borrow that little whip ray? We started calling it a whip ray because, as you know from fishing the flats, the first people up on the flats are the whip rays, with those things in the shallowest of water. They're up there, and we figured an appropriate name for this boat. So that was sort of the genesis of what happened. And Dozer and Greg Ackland decided to tow it over to the Bahamas one year, and they bridled it up behind Greg's big boat, the Cloud 9.
Right.
And somewhere on the high seas, this little boat decided to dive.
Uh-oh.
And it broke into a million pieces, which they salvaged and towed somehow to Abaco. I think they sold it to a local guy, all torn up, and it dropped out of sight for years. I was over there with a hosted trip 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah, 4 or 5 years ago. Yep.
And I went for a stroll through Cherokee, through the village, and I looked up in somebody's yard, and here was hull number 1.
Was it a planter?
Recognizable. No, it was this.
That's amazing.
It was this. I recognized it only because of the hull. So when I saw it there, I said, man, this boat needs to be in Titusville.
It was our mission. It was a 2-year mission to get that skiff back here in Titusville. It's truly been an amazing story, and it's really to have it in our showroom for all of our customers and current owners and new potential owners to see. People are in awe that we have it back, and it's in, still in, I would consider, fishable shape.
I'm going to make an offer on these things.
So
I want this boat back.
All cash, no financing.
Flip, thanks again today for sharing that story, and for us to be able to experience the skiff that really changed shallow water fishing as you knew it back then and as we know it today. Thanks a lot, Flip. Appreciate it.
My pleasure, guys.
Awesome, buddy.
Thanks for putting up with my stories.
Oh, this is going to be tough.
Is that the lens that makes my ass look big?
You had it! You hit him!
Well, Flip, a little change of scenery here.
Yeah, no, I think it's a good